breakdown of law and order. Those protests continued despite the country's Supreme Court dismissing the order of the High Court that precipitated that crisis. 93% of the seats in government services were then kept for the meritorious and only 5% jobs were reserved for freedom fighters and their descendants. But the ball was set in motion and the violent protests over this past weekend were the tipping point. From Bangladesh's Iron Lady to now someone who seeks asylum, perhaps in the United Kingdom, Sheikh Hasina's fall from the top is significant both for her country and for the entire subcontinent. Before we decode that, let me take you through some of the telling pictures from today. Here's what happened. There was speculation that was rife of Sheikh Hasina having to have fled her country. There were visuals that came to the fore eventually where she was seen along with her sister and some other trusted lieutenants leaving in a chopper from Dhaka. What transpired on the streets of Dhaka then were celebrations. We saw protests over the last few weeks. Those protests became celebrations now. Then these pictures came in from inside the Prime Minister's official residence. As soon as Sheikh Hasina was out, there were these protesters who stormed that building, who went inside. You were also then seeing them sprawled across her bedroom as well. Then we saw vandalism that took place outside on the streets of Dhaka. There were protesters that were vandalizing and desecrating Mujibur Rahman's statue, the man who fought for the freedom of Bangladesh, the man who's credited for Bangladesh being a country in itself. These protesters laid siege at the Prime Minister's palace as well, despite the army chief coming out and saying that we will not allow any sort of anarchy on the streets of Dhaka. That did not stop these protesters from taking law into their own hands. We also saw loot that was taking place. As soon as they stormed the Prime Minister's palace, few minutes later, you could see all of them walking out with some of the furniture from inside what was the former Prime Minister's home. Now, why is this significant? Why is this crisis and the uncertainty as far as these political tremors in Bangladesh go? Why is that significant? Now, diplomatic relations between India and Bangladesh formally began in 1971, and since then, those ties have only strengthened. But with the latest turmoil, this is how it could impact us, which is why it's concerning. This could cause a refugee crisis in India. Remember, the borders are already porous, as many say. It could affect demographic balance in several states that border Bangladesh. An unstable Bangladesh could also jeopardize India's Look East policy. What we've seen between India and Bangladesh ever since Sheikh Hasina has been at the helm of affairs is that ties have been extremely boosted pretty well. We've seen that apart from all the other neighbors that we have who've tilted towards China, Bangladesh has steadfastly remained in India's corner, and that's important. Could that take a hit? Sheikh Hasina's rival is perceived to be closer to Pakistan. That's a concern as well. This new regime could also be more susceptible to Chinese influence like we've seen in Nepal. Now, Islamized Bangladesh under Hasina's rivals could also jeopardize the Hindu population there. Now, she's someone who was credited of cracking down on Islamist militants in the past in a nation that is primarily seen as a Muslim country. And even then, the iron hand that she did show during that crackdown after riots, after terror attacks, was something that was well acclaimed. Could that change now that she's out of power? What happens until the new government is formed? This interim government that is going to be formed by the army, what exactly will they be doing? Will they manage to keep a lid on this unrest, or is it only going to spiral further? That's something that we'll take to our guests who are joining us in just a bit. But first, listen in to the army chief.
দেশে একটা ক্রান্তিকাল চলছে। আমি সমস্ত রাজনৈতিক দলের নেতৃবৃন্দকে এখানে আমন্ত্রণ করেছিলাম। ওনারা এখানে এসেছেন। আমরা একটা সুন্দর আলোচনা করেছি। সেখানে আমরা সিদ্ধান্ত নিয়েছি যে একটা ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্ট আমরা ফর্ম করব এবং ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্টের মাধ্যমে এই দেশের সমস্ত কার্যকলাপ চলবে এবং দেশে একটা শান্তি শৃঙ্খলা ফিরিয়ে নিয়ে আসবে। আপনারা আমার সাথে সহযোগিতা করেন। দয়া করে আর এই ভাঙচুর, হত্যা, মারামারি, সংঘর্ষ এগুলো থেকে বিরত হন। মাননীয় প্রধানমন্ত্রীও পদত্যাগ করেছেন এবং এখন একটা ইন্টারিম গভর্নমেন্ট ফর্ম করে আমরা আমাদের কার্যক্রম পরিচালনা করব।
Now, Sheikh Hasina has stepped down. She's left the country. She's headed for the United Kingdom, is what we're learning, where she will be seeking political asylum. She's landed here in India. Whether she's going to be staying here or this is just meant for transit, we're still trying to get more details of that. But will this have a ripple effect for the subcontinent? Should India be wary of that? That's what we'll open up here on this edition of Plain Speak. Former Indian diplomat Ashok Sajanhar joins us on this broadcast. Strategic affairs expert Monica Verma is with us as well. Journalist from Bangladesh Mazhar Khan will be joining us in just a short while from now. But let me open this up and ask Ashok Sajanhar. You know, the kind of uncertainty that we're seeing in Bangladesh at the moment, how should India read this? Should we be wary of what's to come our way?
Of course, I think India needs to be very wary of whatever is happening because since Bangladesh was created in 1971 and after that in 1975, the changes that took place, I think India has had to face the brunt from our eastern side. And I remember when I was there, BNP was a democratically elected government. But then we had all, as far as, terrorism in northeastern parts of India, northeastern states of India, they were all getting safe havens in Bangladesh. There was, whether it was supplies of equipment, of guns, of money, of financial support, etc. So we've gone through that period, and it is only over the last 15 years that Sheikh Hasina has been in position from 2009 onwards, that she has been very strongly, she has collaborated with us, cooperated with us. So that is definitely something that we are going to miss, because if this is going to be a new government that is going to come as a result of a backlash, that means many of the policies that are being followed by Sheikh Hasina and the Awami League government, they are going to be, they are not going to be followed, and in fact 180 degrees across the board policies will be followed. And of course there are going to be countries in our neighborhood, whether it is Pakistan or it is China, they will try to fish in troubled waters, and they will try to create problems and create difficulties for India. So India definitely has to be very wary and has to keep a very close watch and a very close eye on whatever is happening there. Of course, it's an internal matter of Bangladesh, but it has huge implications and repercussions, not only for India, but for the whole region. And I think instability, it could give rise to instability in this region. Poonam.
And it's interesting that you say that, we've always said this is an internal matter, especially in the recent past as well, as those tempers were flaring up there. India has always maintained this is an internal matter of Bangladesh. Could this also mean that this gives us that window to try and now distance ourselves from a leader who's extremely unpopular at the moment and invokes that kind of sentiment? But before I get into that, I also want to get in a word from Mazhar Khan, who joins us from Bangladesh. Sir, I just want to know first and foremost, what's the situation like there at the moment? We know that the army is going to be forming an interim government. Any details of that have come to the fore?
In fact, there are several names are coming out of from the different political parties. They are of proposing the names from their own choice. There are a few civil society people also on the list, and except Awami League, most of the party leaders have joined the meeting. So there is a question: if Awami League is absent on that meeting or on during the process of formation interim government, will there be any question? I have to understand that question of neutrality. That is one of the questions rising around. And meanwhile, the Chief of Army Staff have already mentioned that overnight it can't be done. It could take few times or a few days. So the whole nation is now looking at the Army Chief of Staff and the concerned political party leaders who are on the process.
Right, even today when the army chief came out and held that press conference and he gave out details of the fact that Sheikh Hasina had actually resigned and that interim government was to be formed, he did say that this was an interim government. Would that mean there would be elections that would be held once again in the near future?
So far, maybe the duration or the span of time for this interim government could be not more than 3 months, something like that. In fact, the process is under discussion, and the things will be finalized shortly after having discussion with all the political party leaders and representatives. Then there will be a concrete outline. What will be the duration of the interim government? What will be the mode of their operandis? And what will be the role of the army during that time? And what will be the role of the president of Bangladesh? Everything will be sorted out, and after all the interest parties or groups comes to a concrete decision.
Monica Verma, this of course, the uncertainty remains as far as Bangladesh goes, and New Delhi is watching closely. But if you look at the subcontinent, if you look at our neighborhood, India perhaps is the only fully functioning democracy now at the moment. We're seeing this kind of political turmoil that happen in every country that surrounds us.
Absolutely, and ironically, if we compare the situation between Bangladesh and Pakistan, I think Pakistan is one country where democracy was in much more pathetic condition than Bangladesh, so to say. In fact, an entire election was stolen away. People had voted for one political party. People had voted for one leader, Imran Khan, and overnight we've seen how the ballot papers were changed. How overnight the military in Pakistan stole the election and did not allow people to exercise their vote, their choice and the mandate that people had given. And compare it with what's happening in Bangladesh. Just in January, Sheikh Hasina had won the elections. BNP, understandably, it had boycotted the elections, but still, it was an electorally elected government. People had exercised their choice. They'd gone to polling stations. They had given vote for her. So that explains why for 15 years, we are not talking about a leader who was very unpopular as we are looking at it today. She has ruled Bangladesh for 20 years. Once between, I think 2001 to 2000, and my figures may not match, but 2009 to 2024, 15 years, 3 terms of 5 years each, she was continuously ruling Bangladesh, and that too very, very beautifully. Under her, Bangladesh has seen one of the best times, most politically stable times. Their economy was booming. Their per capita income was increasing. In fact, many analysts in India were giving the example of Bangladesh, and they were telling the Indians that, look at their per capita income today, look at their growth story today, look at their exports, how textiles have emerged as one of the strongest engines of their economy. And suddenly, one leader who was enjoying so much popularity is no more popular today. So that, I think, is something which is a cause of concern for us, and something that requires deeper investigation. We know it was a students' protest, but we also need to remember that what started it, in fact, was a decision by the judiciary. The reservation quota, which became very unpopular, the reservation quota which led to it all, was actually not brought by Hasina, but it was brought by the court in Bangladesh. And this government, especially in the last 5 years, has seen one of the worst kind of regime change operation being tried. We in India were looking at different kinds of reports coming in from think tanks based in the West, who were telling us that the democracy in Bangladesh is backsliding. The same kind of attack which even India faces. So I think we can't just accept things as they are unfolding. There needs to be a deeper sense of investigation into it. There needs to be a deeper a sort of our own analysis where we can see which actors are responsible for this. It was a student protest. I understand there was organic anger against Sheikh Hasina's leadership. That also I understand. But the kind of massive backlash that we have witnessed in the last 1 month, I don't think that is something which is organic.
Right, and that's something that we'll talk about because there's a lot of speculation that's going on as to what exactly was the trigger of why this happened. If there were external forces specifically pointing to Pakistan, if they fueled the already lit fire as far as Bangladesh goes. But I request all of you all to stay on with us. My colleague Akash also joining us, getting us more details. Akash, what we now know is that her aircraft has landed in India at the Hindon Air Base. What from here on? Is she going to be staying in the national capital or is she going to be making her way to London from here?
So Poonam, first of all, we are getting no clarity as to what is going to happen because as far as these developments are concerned, so in the last 3-4 hours, things are changing rapidly. Initially I had a confirmation, from someone associated with ATC here in Palam, and, we had a confirmation that the plane is going to land here in Palam. But then we got to know that, it has landed in Hindon. Also, at this point in time, refueling is happening. This is what the sources are telling. But as far as Indian Air Force or Ministry of External Affairs are concerned, so no one is saying anything on this particular matter. We are seeing a lot of, things happening in Bangladesh. Border security forces are on high alert. But at this point in time, as far as movement of Sheikh Hasina is concerned, so, we have no confirmation as to if she is going to stay here in the national capital. Yes, there are, inputs that she has asked for asylum in London because, in some time from now, we are also expecting that this plane will be, heading towards London. But again, we are waiting for an independent confirmation onto that particular part. Also on landing part, just few minutes back, the plane has landed and we are learning that refueling is happening. And after some time, it will move to its final destination.
Right, so we're still unsure of whether she's going to be staying here or not. When she landed at the Hindon Air Base, any details if anybody from the Indian forces was there, if any coordination is happening as far as India's forces and Sheikh Hasina's team perhaps is concerned, Akash?
So as far as Indian Air Force is concerned, so you see there is a 24 into 7 hours deployment there at Hindon. Hindon is one of the largest air bases here in India. As far as this plane is concerned, so it was C-130J around 6 p.m. This is what we are learning, that around 6 p.m. the plane got landed, here at Hindon. Earlier, it was very much accessible on open source and we were able to track the movement as well. But just 30 minutes before the landing, it got vanished from the radars and from the open source data. And, after that, just few minutes back, we have got a confirmation that the plane has actually landed here at Hindon. Also, there are some speculations that are going on. Some people are, saying about Sheikh Hasina coming out from the airport and then possibly be staying, in the national capital. However, there is no confirmation on that because the latest input that we have got is about, her asking for asylum in London. Also, there were reports that, she wants to go to London and in India, she'll be, halting over for just refueling part. Again, we have no confirmation, Poonam, and we'll, wait and watch as to how things will pan out from, here on.
Right, Akash, for the moment, thank you so much for getting us the latest. We'll keep coming back to you as more information trickles in. Our panelists continue to be with us on this broadcast. Mazhar Khan, we're in fact getting pictures now coming in from Bangladesh. We're seeing initially it was the Prime Minister's palace or official residence that was stormed. There were people inside. There was loot that was happening. Now similar scenes are coming to the fore from inside the parliament as well. Now, Bangladesh is a democratic country. When this decision was taken of Hasina having to quit, the army taking over, did they not see this coming? Could they have handled the situation better?
In fact, the total protesters, behind the protest, there are some people who are anti-Awami lobby or anti-government lobby. They are taking advantage out of that. That is very naturally happens when a normal a demonstration or protest takes place. There are few people who takes advantage out of that. And, so far, near about 16 years, Awami League is ruling Bangladesh. So there are opposition leaders and supporters. They are definitely taking privilege out of that. I would like to add, in some part of, you are seeing the picture of Dhaka, but if you go for a bigger picture outside Dhaka, you will also find such kind of vandalism is going on. Especially it is targeted to government supporters, former government supporters, and that is definitely operated by anti-Awami League lobbies. This is a normal scenario going on.
Those trying to fish in troubled waters will always find those kind of troubled waters. And Ashok Sajanhar, you know,
Exactly.
there's speculation of how there was an external hand. This wasn't an organic protest, as Monica Verma was also pointing out. It was, in fact, Sheikh Hasina who had said no to any sort of reservation a few years ago. The court decided to reverse that decision that an elected government had taken.
No, you're absolutely right, Poonam. I think this raises very many questions because, what has also become clear is that while it might have the protests might have started peacefully, might have started organically, but very quickly the protests were hijacked by anti-established elements, anti-Awami League elements, anti-government elements, and you do not know, whether, of course, hand from outside, whether it was Pakistan, also because ISI is always there in our neighborhood, trying to fish in these troubled waters, but also some of these other countries, whether it is the United States or it is European countries. I remember I was in Dhaka for a conference few months ago, and then also sometime back about a year ago before that. So on both the occasions, I could see that as far as the American ambassador is concerned, he was very openly speaking about how, about the authoritarianism, about the autocratic manner in which Sheikh Hasina, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina was functioning, how there was democratic backsliding that was taking place in Bangladesh. So I think there are a number of forces that have been acting together. And initially what we saw that the initial demand that was taken care of when these high reservation quotas, they were reduced to just about 7% by the ruling of the Supreme Court. But I think we also need to examine as to whether there was some underlying mischief that was involved when the High Court decided to get, announce these very high reservation quotas, and because that was really proved to be the spark on the basis of which all these demonstrations started. And I think once they had stopped, Poonam, when the Supreme Court came out with this verdict that only 7% of reservation, then maybe there was this pent-up anger because some of the other issues, whether it is inflation or unemployment, etc., or corruption, or lack of accountability. So all these issues were lying there under the surface, and the elements, opposition parties and external elements, they got into the action and they took full advantage of the very uncertain situation, and that has resulted within a matter of a few days to what we have seen expire, what happened yesterday in terms of the shootings and deaths of 91, today about 300 people. And of course, the youngsters, students, they are hot-headed, and once they start coming out on the streets, it is difficult to get them back. But at the end, what I'd like to say is that there have been very many forces, not all of them acting for the benefit of the country, for the advantage of the country, but for their own personal interests, who have come together and resulted in this situation. Poonam.
And Mazhar Khan, speaking of the United States, they've always had this kind of opinion as far as Sheikh Hasina is concerned, but they've been more amicable or more warm towards someone else who's been a prime minister alternatively, and that was Khaleda Zia. Now, she also has been ailing. The BNP is also struggling, is what we're given to understand. But the United States will have perhaps a say or some sort of influence when we look forward to the next government in Bangladesh?
Regarding international issues, you see that recently the protest started just after Sheikh Hasina visited China. Okay, and as per international politics, China, when China is a good friend of Bangladesh, then US control rate. It's very normal. And from the very beginning, there are several observations by the US government, and that there are many bans of officials of Bangladesh, like police, law enforcement officials, and other officials were banned to visit US. These things are going on the basis of human rights issues and others. Non-judicial killing is one of the allegations raised by U.S. Concerned, and that regarding Philistine issue, Bangladesh is a bit loud. This could also draw attention of the extra forces. You understand that regarding international issues. So it might have some connection with the international issues, because Bangladesh is not a small market. It's a big market for China or America both. This could draw some attention of the international communities.
Absolutely. Monica Verma, before I get you in, there's more information that's trickling in. What we're now learning is that in the view of this emerging situation as far as Bangladesh is concerned, Air India has cancelled all scheduled operations of flights to and from Dhaka. Continuous monitoring is underway. The safety of passengers and crew is paramount, is what Air India has now come out and said in a statement. Akash, my colleague, joining us, getting us more details. Akash, Air India, of course, has suspended all operations until further notice to and from Dhaka. The airport in Dhaka as well has been completely out of operation for the last few hours.
Exactly, and Air India has in fact put out a statement saying that they are also, providing one-time waiver on rescheduling part, and they have cancelled, all their flights that were scheduled for Dhaka, to or from Dhaka. And they are also mentioning about the safety of their crew. Also, it is very important to mention that, Indian Railways has in fact terminated all the services till 6th of August. We have some freight trains in Bangladesh and also some wagons of some freight trains of Bangladesh here in India. And both the sides have detained the wagons, and we are expecting some sort of statement on those wagons as well. But at this point in time, as far as trains and flights are concerned, so Air India has at least announced that they have suspended all the flights from and to Dhaka.
Right, so operations have taken a hit. New Delhi, of course, is closely monitoring the situation in its neighborhood. And Monica Verma, like we were talking about, the borders are extremely porous. This could be a big challenge as far as influx of refugees for India is concerned. Recently, we had certain comments that were made by Mamata Banerjee that were taken not in the right stride by someone, by some politicians in Bangladesh. There has been a lot of back and forth over that as well.
Absolutely, in fact, not just air travel, Indian government has also placed a ban on trains as well. So in the last 10 years, connectivity has become really top-notch between India and Bangladesh. But sadly, with this turn of events, we can actually see how those connectivity initiatives, in the short term, definitely we have to stop the refugee influx. And for this precise reason, New Delhi has already stopped all kinds of travel between India and Bangladesh. And also looking at the situation, I think a circular has already went out from the Ministry of External Affairs regarding people, especially Indian citizens in Bangladesh, to take care of themselves, be in safe spaces and all. But this is a perennial issue when it comes to India-Bangladesh relations. We fought an entire war because of this, the 1971 war. This was one of the biggest reasons, the refugee influx. And today also we share a very long, contiguous border with Bangladesh. And it is a politically volatile question always, at all times in India, not just in West Bengal, but also in Assam, where the demand for an Anarchy was placed, and then other states as well. So I think, and centrally also, many politicians have always said that this infiltration from Bangladesh has to stop. So I think this definitely is a cause of concern, but I won't limit my analysis to only short-term refugee crisis, but I'll also look at the long-term, impact of this. Understandably and also fortunately, thanks to Hasina's leadership, a lot of infiltration, especially those of the terrorists, was stopped by Bangladesh. And like Ashok sir was also saying just when he started out with his comments that, Bangladesh, under the leadership of Sheikh Hasina, had taken very credible measures to ensure that India's security is not jeopardized. And many terrorists who were operating in India's northeast were duly arrested, they were put behind bars, and a lot of action had followed. But will that action will be continued now? That definitely I don't see that happening, because Islamic terrorism, especially the jihadi elements and the radicalism, is a challenge for India. And it was not only on the Pakistan border, on Bangladesh border as well. And now with Bangladesh not remaining in as safe as hands as Hasina was, as sensitive and as empathetic she was towards Indian concerns, I really worry what will happen, with all the other insurgency and so-called of movements which were going on in the northeast, and now we've already seen what happened in Manipur last year. So I think all of this, it becomes a challenge, it becomes a security headache, a nuisance at another level. And
Absolutely. And the sooner that we put a lid on it, the better. We have to ensure that we do have a plan that is put in place. I request all three of you to stay on with us, because now information is coming through. New Delhi, like I said, has been closely monitoring what's exactly happening in our neighborhood. What we're now learning is that External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has met Prime Minister Modi inside the Parliament. Foreign Secretary is also expected to join that meeting. We're yet to get details of what exactly transpired, if this meeting was a routine one or if this was convened just in the backdrop of what's transpiring in our neighborhood. But what we can tell you at the moment is that the Prime Minister and External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar are in a huddle. Payal, my colleague, now joining us, getting us more details. Yes, Payal.
Poonam, just as we speak, also there's a meeting which is going on currently in the Prime Minister's office in Parliament, where the External Affairs Minister, Mr. S. Jaishankar, is currently there. And there is no doubt in anybody's mind that he probably will definitely be briefing the Parliament, in fact, the Prime Minister, about the situation that exists in the neighboring country of Bangladesh. We've seen violence pan out over the last couple of days. Again, we've seen how the Indians had issued an advisory to, in fact, ask their students and ask the people to come back if they wish to. And of course, with this whole coup taking place that we saw over the last couple of hours, India will also be looking at various options, because there could be obviously an influx of refugees, like our guests are just been saying, that should be India's biggest concern, especially in the northeast states, especially in places where, of course, the Bangladesh and India border has been pretty much porous as well. So we'll have to just wait and see what Mr. Jaishankar is able to brief the Prime Minister about the situation. Definitely, he would have taken note of all the details and is currently briefing the Prime Minister of the country.
Right, Payal, thank you so much for getting us the latest on that front. Our guests continue to be with us on this broadcast. Mazhar Khan, another concern that's been coming through both from inside Bangladesh and from outside is also who the successor is going to be and what that would mean to the Hindu community there. Now, Sheikh Hasina was someone who, at a time when several questions were raised, did go ahead and crack the whip on Islamist militants at a time when that was frowned upon. That's something that India had welcomed as well. Is that something that will continue depending on who takes over next?
Right.
Yes, Mr. Khan. Yes, Mr. Khan.
Okay. In fact, Bangladesh is the only country who is 99% capable to eliminate all the extremists and Islamic militants in country. So far, from 2004, you see, the major attack started in Bangladesh by Bangladesh Harkatul Jihad, Zamatul Mujahideen Bangladesh. That was a militant group. All of their kingpins were taken under custody, and they were properly taken care of under legal actions. Till now, you see group several youth tried to flee from their family, and they tried to take militant training in our hill track area. They were also taken care, and few of them were sent back to their family. So by nature, or according to our heredity, Bangladesh is committed to take care of such militancy and other issues. So that is to be confirmed that in Bangladesh, any kind of form of government comes and rules the country, they won't allow such militancy or insurgents in our territory.
We do hope that that kind of stance continues, but the risk, of course, is that countries like China could try and foment trouble, like we've seen Ashok Sajanhar, both in terms of Maldives. in terms of alternatively happening in Nepal as well. China blows hot and cold as far as Nepal goes, but Maldives for sure, Sri Lanka to an extent as well in some parts. In that situation, if the BNP, which is the principal opposition at the moment there, if we see the rise of the BNP once again there, is that something, is that tilt towards China is something that is very much a present danger for India?
No, absolutely, Poonam. I think it's not only a tilt towards China, it's also a tilt towards Pakistan. It's also the presence of the ISI there, because BNP has been always very closely connected with the ISI, with Pakistan. And, when the freedom struggle took place, I think BNP was definitely not in favor of this independence liberation that took place in 1971. And also what happened in as far as the when the BNP government was there, at that time also, whether it was with the Jamaat-e-Islami. The Jamaat-e-Islami also has its own particularly extremist militant elements, and they were acting against India. So I think that's a very real danger that India has to be concerned about, India has to be mindful about, and we were able to get fulsome support from Sheikh Hasina when she was in power. I am very doubtful whether we will be able to get similar support, because as our friend from Bangladesh said, at the moment, Awami League is not even in the meeting room where decisions are being taken as to how the future processes are going to take place. So I think the policies that Awami League has followed, there will be the pursuit of policies would be quite different, radically different from whatever it has been there. And, whether it is as far as there was also a campaign of India Out, which had been, taking a cue from what happened in Maldives, that was supported by China there. Whether there was any support by China in this context also, I think that will really need to be examined. But I am not so sanguine and hopeful as our friend from Bangladesh is, that they will be able to control and follow same policies that were being followed by Sheikh Hasina to control the militant elements and fundamentalist extremist elements that have been active in Bangladesh earlier.
We do hope that that remains the situation. Of course, we are wary if that is not the case, then how India should react. Before I get you in further, let me just get some information for our viewers. What we're now learning is that the DG of BSF, which is the Border Security Force, is already present in the Eastern Command. As far as the situation on the Indo-Bangladesh border is concerned, it is normal. But India, of course, keeping a close watch. Our forces prepared for all contingencies. Arunima joining us, getting us more details. What more have you gathered, Arunima, from your sources within the BSF?
See, the BSF officials there on the ground, they have augmented the total troops deployed on the Indo-Bangladesh border. And the BSF DG himself is present on the ground. Today he was at Sundarban, then he also took stock of the Indo-Bangla border overall situation there. And in terms of the situation, what we are told is that at this point, it's the ICPs. ICPs are basically points through where traffic crosses over, the road points from which the traffic crosses over. But because there's curfew on the other side, on the Bangladeshi side, traffic is restricted. Other than that, till about 1 hour ago, there was no report of any influx from the Bangladeshi side, even though some media reports suggested that civilians were getting targeted as rioting was happening. But Bangladesh has not seen, Indo-Bangladesh border has not seen any influx of civilians trying to cross over, trying to seek asylum on this side. Nevertheless, BSF is in regular touch with its counterparts, the border guard Bangladesh. They are exchanging notes on a regular basis. And overall, the situation, the sense that I get after speaking to BSF officials is that they also feel that now that there is a change in power in Bangladesh and the main demands of those who were protesting has been accepted, things could get back to normalcy slowly. At least that's the assessment at this point. But it's a dynamic situation, fast changing.
Right, do keep a track of what transpires. For the moment, though, thank you so much for getting us the latest on that front. Ashok Sajanhar and Monica Verma continue to be with us. Salim Samad, the journalist from Dhaka, also joining us. Mr. Samad, first and foremost, I'd like to ask you if you have any more details that you could share with us of what the current situation is like. All we now know for sure is that there is going to be an interim government that is going to be formed. But any details, nitty-gritties of that have been finalized?
Yes, there is. Thank you for having me. Yes, there is a detail of the interim government that's going to be take oath tomorrow morning at the President's Palace. So we are waiting for that, and majority of the new interim government members are from the civil society, some academician, and of course retired Mukti Bahini officer. I mean, Liberation War veteran. So that's a mixed group. Hopefully, and of course, journalists. That's also very interesting. So they will form a government for the 90 days, and within 90 days, they will have to have an election, which is expected that will be free, fair, and inclusive, which Bangladesh has missed for the last 3 elections. I mean, last 15 years, Bangladesh never had a free and fair election.
Free and fair elections is something that has, the aspersions have been cast on that, Mr. Samad. But, what the army chief did say in his press briefing was that the two political parties, the opposition ones, were consulted before Sheikh Hasina stepped down and left the country. There were discussions of what's going to happen next. Could we see elections happen in the near future? We saw what happened in the run-up to elections just last year.
I have told you the election is supposed to be held according to the constitution in 90 days. So the interim government's responsibility will be only to hold an election. That's it. They have nothing to do. They cannot change the constitution. They cannot enact new laws. They have no power according to the constitution of the country. So former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has resigned to the president. The president has given responsibility to the speaker. So the speaker will declare the interim government and take oath of them. So we have to wait, and hopefully there will be a free and fair election after many years. But let me tell you one thing, which is very interesting, maybe interesting for your audience and for your whoever is listening to me, that Bangladesh had the first election, the taste of election in 1970, and that was under a martial law. The next election, again under martial law, was in 2008. And of course, this time again, this is no martial law, but we are having a caretaker government, a interim government, in fact, not the caretaker government, will be holding an election. So we are expecting. So all the elections held under or supervised by the military was absolutely free and fair. So you may debate with me, you can discard, you can throw away my concept. As a journalist, I have participated in the 1970 election as a voter. That was my first vote in my life. And of course, I never voted after the war, after the Liberation War.
It's also interesting that at the helm of affairs of an opposition party in the country is also a man who was the army chief in the past, has led a military coup in the past in Bangladesh. So the dynamics of that also will have to be looked at. But I request all three of you to continue to be with us. We are slipping into a quick break here on this edition of Plain Speak, but we'll be back with all the developments taking place in our neighborhood. Don't go anywhere.
টোটালি মন্ত্রীরা সব বলে গেছে, আপনারা অপেক্ষা থাকেন। 5টা বাজে আমরা গণভবনে যাচ্ছি। গণভবন থেকে যদি শেখ হাসিনা স্বেচ্ছায় আত্মসমর্পণ না করে তাহলে গণভবনে আওয়ামী লীগের গণকবর দেবে ইনশাল্লাহ।
কিন্তু আমরা চাই যে এই সরকার মনে করেন পদত্যাগ করুন এবং এই দেশটা সুন্দর মিলে আবার যে আমরা আগের মতো চলাফেরা করতে পারি, এই জন্যই আজকে আমরা রাজপথে এসেছি।
একদম লাইন অফ ফায়ারে থাকেন না।
পাঁচটা লাশ আসছে এরকম ছেলের, দেখি মাথায় বুলেট, এই জায়গার থেকে মাংস উঠে গেছে। মানে আমি ভাবতে পারি না যে আমার দেশে এরকম মানে যুদ্ধ আমার নিজেদের মানুষের মধ্যে দেখি।
Welcome back. There's complete chaos on the streets of Dhaka. In other parts of Bangladesh as well, we've seen protests that have turned into celebrations in some parts after Sheikh Hasina resigned as the Prime Minister of Bangladesh. She's left the country. She's here in India at the moment. Whether or not she's going to be staying here or eventually leaving for London, for the United Kingdom, where she could seek asylum. That's the details that are coming to the fore. An interim government is going to take oath in Bangladesh tomorrow. What happens next is something that we're keeping an eye out on, and how should India read that? Ashok Sajanhar, former Indian diplomat, is with us on this broadcast. Monica Verma, strategic affairs expert, continues to be with us as well. And Salim Samad, the journalist from Bangladesh, also with us, getting us the perspective from there. Salim Samad, we've seen the kind of visuals that have come to the fore right after Sheikh Hasina resigned and left. The party headquarters of the Awami League was burned down. It was vandalized. Mujibur Rahman's statue was desecrated. We've seen protesters inside the parliament there as well. Complete chaos, really, especially as far as Dhaka is concerned. If this was something that was well thought out by the army, if this was something that was planned, so to say, do you think they could have managed this better? Because what we're seeing right now is complete anarchy on the streets.
I totally agree with you. I will not deny. Yes, there is an anarchy, and of course it is all the jubilant people who have stormed the Prime Minister's official residence as well as the Prime Minister's office. But I am little surprised, but there was a very strong security, especially by the special force, who had always been guarding the Prime Minister's house, residence, official residence, Corner Bhavan, and as well as PMA office. If you're talking about the Awami League office, of course, this is the rage, the hatred that has been accumulated in the last 15 years. they have ventilated. Possibly the army has allowed them to ventilate their, but I am not sure if this happened exactly what has happened in Colombo. If you definitely must remember, it has happened in Kabul. It has happened in many other, in Tunisia. It has happened in many other countries, where of course, if you have a tyrant autocratic regime, and of course the corruption which has is excelled. I mean, it is unbearable corruption as well as money laundering. You just name it. The bank has been looted by the owner of the banks. So you can imagine that how much money has been taken out of the country. So these are, and that has also an impact on the daily groceries. So the common people, the working class, have been highly affected. So you can see that most of them are not students; they are common people. They are from the streets, from their, they are from the different bazaar, and yes, there are many. But I am not defending them. It is definitely the military could have stopped it. I don't know why the military has moved out of that security. It was highly fenced, I mean, protected Prime Minister's office. And of course, I mean, as I mentioned, there is a special force. A special force only to protect the Prime Minister. That has also vanished. And I have heard, and I have pictures with me, that the security guard which is manning the Prime Minister's official residence, they also were participating in the looting. There are photographs of them looting because they were in boots, and of course they were not in the uniform, but they were wearing boots. So this has been noticed again, and of course the millions of people are already in the street, not only in the Dhaka, all the district town, and this bastion has collapsed. And Awami League office has been vandalized because the Awami League office was the center of plundering, looting, and extortion. That is also
right. And it's the anger of the common man that seems to be pouring out on the streets of Dhaka and other cities. That's really the sentiment that has come to the fore from Bangladesh. Sorry to interrupt you there, sir, but we have some information that's coming to the fore now. What we're now learning is that External Affairs Minister of India, S. Shankar, is likely to make a statement in Parliament tomorrow over the entire situation in Bangladesh. It's not just a country that's in our neighborhood. There's a lot at stake as far as the lives of Indians in Bangladesh is also concerned. Payal joining us, getting us more details. Yes, Payal.
You know, Poonam, as far as the Parliament session is concerned, since that is in place right now, the first responsibility for the government will be to take Parliament into conference and brief them about the issue. So before the MEA makes any statement or says anything, the External Affairs Minister, Mr. S. Shankar, will be making a statement. We are given to understand sometime tomorrow in Parliament in both houses as well. Of course, the decision of when he can make the statement will be taken by the Parliamentary Affairs Minister, who is currently also in a meeting with the other top brass of the party. So, you know, sooner than later we'll know the exact time, but it is pretty likely that Parliament will be taken into conference. They'll be given a detail as to what really has been happening, what is the condition of the Indians over there, what is the worry as far as the influx is concerned. Because remember, even through the course of the day, many MPs, especially from Bengal, had raised their concern over the influx of, migrants who would be migrating from Bangladesh to India, and especially impacting the demography of the northeast states and also Bengal. So that's something which they wanted a clarity with the government of India from.
Right. Payal, thank you so much for getting us the latest on that front. Our panelists continue to be with us, but I'm running short of time. I want Monica Verma and Ashok Sajjanhar to have 30 seconds for their final comments. Ashok Sajjanhar, we're of course wary of what's to happen, but perhaps India should now decide the kind of line we want to take. Like I said, so far we've been saying that this is Bangladesh's internal affair. Perhaps is it now time to take a stronger stance given what's happened now?
No, basically, I think the strongest stance, Poonam, will be as far as Indian students are concerned, as far as Indians are concerned, their security, their safety. And of course, keeping a very close eye on whatever is happening in Bangladesh, developments that are taking in Bangladesh, and keeping our channels of communication open. Because basically, I think it needs to be understood. It definitely is known in India, but definitely needs to be understood in Bangladesh, whichever dispensation comes there, that India wants good, close, friendly relations. We want stability in our relations. We want that, we wish Bangladesh well, the people of Bangladesh well. We wish them peace, we wish them security, we wish them prosperity. And India has been working towards that, whichever government has been in position.
Right, and the Act East or Look East sort of policy that India has been undertaking, that should not take a hit. Monica Verma, last 30 seconds.
I think I totally agree with what Ashok sir said, that in the long term, no matter who rules Bangladesh eventually, after the dust settles down, it's very important for India to maintain good relations with the new dispensation, simply because we've invested so much of our energy in the Act East initiative as well as in the Bay of Bengal initiative. If we look at how India's relations with Bangladesh have improved in the last 10 years, there's a lot which is at stake, and Bangladesh is key to India's stability, especially our connection with our own northeast. So I think it doesn't
especially
matter
given the kind of trouble we've had both on our eastern and western frontier with Pakistan and China is concerned. This is something that we have to definitely keep a much closer eye on. We cannot have a situation where we saw the kind of tilt that happened in Maldives or in Nepal to happen with Bangladesh as well. On that note, I have to leave it there. I thank you all for joining us here on this broadcast and sharing your perspective. It's a wrap from my side on this edition of Plain Speak.
মানে লাশের পর লাশ আমি মানে কি করব, সবাই ওখানে হাত পেতে দোয়া করতে।
আমাদের দাবি এক দফা এক, শেখ হাসিনার পদত্যাগ। আমরা সে ভেবেছে আমাদেরকে শিক্ষা প্রতিষ্ঠান বন্ধ করলে আমাদের আটকে রাখতে পারবে, আমাদের আটকে রাখা যাবে না। আমার ভাই রক্ত রাস্তার মধ্যে এখনো পড়ে আছে, রক্তের দাগ শুকায় নাই। এই জন্য আমরা রাজপথ ছাড়ছি না যতক্ষণ তার পদত্যাগ হয়।
We cannot stand on our roads, we cannot stand in our balcony, so we are not secured anywhere. We have no safety. This cannot be a secure and independent country. So we want peace, we want freedom, and we want a perfect environment for our students to go back to the classroom.
Dozens of people have been killed and scores were injured in clashes in Bangladesh on Sunday. Police fired tear gas and lobbed stun grenades as tens of thousands of protesters took to the streets, calling for Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina to resign.
All the ministers are in hiding. Wait and see how the people will go and surround the Prime Minister's house. If Sheikh Hasina doesn't resign voluntarily, we will take our next step.
The Interior Ministry declared an indefinite nationwide curfew starting at 6 p.m. local time on Sunday. It's the first time it has taken such a step during the current protests, which began last month. The unrest is the government's biggest test since deadly protests erupted after Hasina won a fourth straight term in January elections that were boycotted by the main opposition Bangladesh Nationalist Party. Critics of Hasina, along with human rights groups, have accused her government of using excessive force to stamp out the movement, a charge she and her ministers deny. Demonstrators blocked major highways on Sunday as student protesters launched a non-cooperation programme to press for the government's resignation. After a national security panel meeting, Hasina said those protesting were, quote, not students but terrorists who are out to destabilise the nation. For the second time during the recent protests, the government shut down high-speed internet services, mobile operators said. Some social media platforms were also unavailable. Last month, at least 150 people were killed and thousands more were injured and arrested in violence sparked by demonstrations led by student groups protesting against quotas for government jobs. The protests paused after the Supreme Court scrapped most quotas. But students sporadically returned to the streets last week, demanding justice for the families of those killed.
This is CNN News 18 and Federal Bank Primetime Studio.
You're with the hard facts from the CNN News 18 and Federal Bank Primetime Studio. Viewers, what fast-paced developments today in the subcontinent. At least Sheikh Hasina got to set the terms of her departure from office. The military got her to sign on her own resignation, rustled up a plane and flew her out to Delhi. Sari and smile, we're told, all in place. She's landed just a few moments ago at Delhi's Hindon Airport just outside of Delhi. Her own father, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, wasn't half as lucky, even though he stood accused of almost the same sins. On August 15, the day India marks its independence, Bangladesh mourns its founder's assassination. The crime of unimaginable thanklessness sent ripples across the subcontinent in 75. And I'm talking about 1975. Today, 50 years later, almost to the date, Rahman's daughter has been ousted from power by the very same troika that did her father in. Viewers, what we can tell you, of course, is a little bit of the background.